Man, I feel like I'm about to coach, man. When I listen to him, man, I feel like I'm back on the sidelines again. So the juices are starting to run a little bit. Janice, I got my note cards too, by the way. I thought about how I wanted to do this and make sure that I did a great job. I had the opportunity to do this last year with the dynamic Brandon Jefferson, BJ, and you always learn when you go through it a little bit. And so the odds of doing this again 2 years in a row is pretty rare, so I feel very blessed. Let me start here, and let me tell you a quick story. And Jay, I'm not going to embarrass you tonight, man. It's going to be all good, man. So he's nervous there. We both got stories, though. So when I had got notification that Jay was going to go into the Hall of Fame, I was excited. And so the first thing I did was I grabbed my phone, I text, and I said, hey, big fella, man, congratulations on the Hall of Fame. Well deserved. And then I got a response back. It said, thanks, but this is Michael. So I had so I had to pivot real quick on that because I was a little embarrassed, just for a second. So, Michael, what did I say? I said, well, all three of the Morse brothers should be in the Hall of Fame. So I had a pretty good comeback on that one. But that's how it started, though. But I was excited. And so first, congratulations to the whole 2022 class. This is such a great accomplishment. It's something that's for all time. You're going to look back on this when you're 75 years old and say, that's still there. I did that. And so you might not understand the significance of what it is on this day, but you're going to appreciate it. And I'll give you this, and then I'm going to move into Big J, and I'm telling you from experience, when your kids start to get a little older and they play sports and they start to feel their oats a little bit and they start talking trash to you, it's going to happen to you guys. You can just say, hey, buddy, Hall of Fame 2022, and then it shuts all the noise up. All right, so I'm giving you that little tidbit. You're welcome right now. All right, you can't tell the story of Jonathan Morse without talking about the Morse tribe, and I mean that in the most respectful way. This family is part of this institution in a lot of ways. So his beautiful parents, salt of the earth people. Kevin, rest in peace. Linda, obviously Joshua, Michael, and then you had Grandma as well too. Okay, and so my memories flash back to being a constant and always seeing the family present. No matter wins, losses, they were there. And so, you know, it gives you an understanding of why J-Mo turned out to be what he is. And I'll get into the basketball and all that stuff, but I'm going to talk about the person first and foremost. But let me share this with you. So in some form or fashion, I spent 15 years at this place on the sidelines, first as an assistant. I came back as a head coach. And, again, this is about J-Mo. But one of the things that was routine, and we all like routine because it's comfort food, is you would hear in the stands, and this is in the chaos of things going on, and you would hear, that's a foul. Or you would hear, traveling, your shoes untied. And you guys know who I'm talking about. That was Big Kevin. And so, yeah, give it up for him. And the unique thing about that, and to make it even more remarkable, is it wasn't just at the Aurora Event Center. You would see them at Adams State. You would see them at, oh my goodness, Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, if you're going there to watch, or Las Vegas, New Mexico, excuse me, if you're making that road trip, then you're really in. So you saw that family as a constant. And then, you know, so we have Kevin, but then there would be a little bit of a lull in the action sometimes in the games, and you would hear, go, Jonathan. And that would be Grandma. And I think she only cheered for you, though, Jay. But God bless her. I tell you what, again, you understand why he is the way he is because of that family. And it's unique, and I had the privilege of watching it over the years. And so shout out to just the Morris family, please. You can give it up. Okay, 52, 47, 70, 72. Does anybody know what those numbers are? Jay, do you know what those numbers are? Because you should know that. All right, I'm going to put a percentage on it now. 52%, 47%, 70%, 72%. What is that? That's your free throw percentage over the course of 4 years. Now, and I'm going to talk about some traits. One of the things with J-Mo is consistency. And you take it for granted when you're a coach, when the same guy shows up every single day. So for your first 2 years, you were 52%, 47%. And then you made that huge jump between sophomore and junior year. You went from 47 to 70 and then 72. So I talked about consistently. So for 2 years, you were consistently bad. And then 2 years, you were consistently good. So, but I told you I would embarrass you. That's a compliment. But I've never seen anybody jump from 47% to 70%. If you know basketball, that's an astronomical jump, and it's because he put in the work. You know, it bothered him. And as a coach, if we're on that point, and you got to put me on the shot clock because I'm not going to be quick right now. I apologize, but I get one chance at this. But in terms of the free throws, that's just time, because when you watch Jay shoot it as a coach, your job is, okay, make a tweak here or there. There wasn't much of a tweak. He didn't have any major flaws. It was right here, you know, and we might have had some talks where, you know what, dude, go up there, make the free throw because you're that good. And it was simple, but he put in the work, and that's what Jay's all about. So let's talk about the man before we get to the basketball part of it, because that's important. That's what we're all here for. In higher education, we're trying to bring people to the next step of their lives, and we're trying to develop them, and basketball was a huge piece of it. We all agree on that, but it's just the development. You develop as a person over the course of 4 years because you're in an environment where you're getting stimulated every day if you have the right people around you. And so we're going to talk about the man. Some of the characteristics that come to mind is humble. You know, you never saw Jay, if he had a great game, you know, get in front of a microphone and say it was all about me. It was all about teammates and giving praise everywhere else and deflecting. So, you know, being humble, number one, great quality, you know, Jay. Smart and biology major. And I'm not even sure if I spelled biology on my note card right. So I'm going to tell you right now, that dude is just wickedly smart. You tell him things one time, and he gets it. And so, oftentimes, he's too smart because he would correct me. If we were doing out of bounds play, I'd screw it up in practice. He'd be like, oh, coach, we got to go there. And so I said, okay, you are smart. You're definitely smart. Number 3, loyal. Very loyal. If you're in his camp, if you're his friend, if you're in his circle, you're in his circle. Good, bad, indifferent. The dude doesn't pass judgments, and he makes you feel like, hey, man, you know, you're in there from day one all the way to the end. So that trait right there of loyalty, I tell you what, man, you should put it right at the top. Right at the top. And we're going to talk about some athletic endeavors and achievements, but the loyalty piece of it, that's when I think about Jay, that's what I think about, man. You can call him on your worst day, and the dude finds a way to put a smile on your face, and that's a big-time quality. The last one is kind. And I know this big dude, and let me back up for a second, but remind me I said kind, because you know how I am, Jay. I jump all over the place. But let me go back to kind of our little engagement as coach-player. So I was gone for 5 years. Of course, you saw Jay, and we talked about this, Joshua and I. We were trying to go through the timeline. And Jay was about 8 years old when I first got here. And, you know, Joshua was the first to come through. And then you had Michael. And Jay was this 8-year-old running around. And then, you know, I left after Michael's senior year. And I went, and I was gone for 5 years before I came back. And so then by the time I came back, this little 8-year-old all of a sudden wasn't an 8-year-old anymore. He was a sophomore. And our first encounter, I looked at this dude. I said, who is this giant, man? 6'8", 240. And it was just like another connection again. You know, but you saw him. J-Mo witnessed the presence of giants in the basketball program. And he was paying attention as a little kid. You know, so then let me go back to kind. So to me, I always involved when we were recruiting. I always tried to put the recruits around kids, my kids, just kids, because you get a true test of what someone is when they're around kids. Some guys are a little reserved. Some guys don't want any piece of that. And then you got Jay, man, that's on the floor crawling around playing with our kids and making them laugh. And so I would ask my kids when they were young, and they were young when Jay was playing, and I would say, well, who's your favorite player? And I always like to mess around with them like that. And they say, J-Mo. And then sometimes they say, BJ. And so I was thinking, okay, J-Mo, BJ. So J-Mo, because probably he acted their age at times like that. So that made sense. But biggest guy, and then you have BJ. If he's watching this, I think they were about the same size as BJ. So BJ, if you're watching this, man, I love you. But I had to get that one in there. But just a kind soul. And this, my last kind of point on the kindness part of it is we would have a tradition where we would go to the Children's Hospital. And we would do that once a year, and it would be a little bit before Christmas maybe. And we would take the guys there, and you know how the Children's Hospital is. Sometimes those kids are having just a terrible day. Sometimes they're good and they want to see you. And I would always make it a habit to just hang in the back, because you really learn about your team, and you learn about guys' personalities when you're in that kind of setting. So we went to some rooms, and we did this over the course of my whole time here. It was once a year, and it was tradition with the program, and that was very important to us for a lot of different reasons, which I don't need to go into. And I would watch Jay, and we would go into a room, and you could tell a kid was having a rough day, and you would see the parents, and they looked like they had been through the ringer, and it was real life. It was real life stuff. And then Jay would have the ability to go in there and make one of those kids that was having a rough day smile. So if that's not kind at heart and having a way with people in the field, I don't know what is. So that always stuck to me, though, that kindness part. And then Jay would always have a smile on his face while he was cutting your throat on the court. He would, do his business, but he would do it in a very friendly way. Always had a smile on his face. So let's talk about the basketball part of it. Like I talked about, Jay grew up amongst giants, man. He's seen all the great ones come through. And not only that, he was in the shadow of his brothers, man. Joshua came through first, and then we had Michael that came through, and tremendous guys, tremendous people, tremendous players. So, Jay was, seeing that stuff unfold year after year after year. And so he was in somewhat of a shadow. But I tell you what, needless to say, he broke out of that shadow. And then a lot of the players that come after him, they're going to be in that shadow right there, because it's about excellence. And it's about excellence over a consistent period of time. If you look at his numbers, they're very, very consistent from year 1 to year 4. And again, as a coach, you take things for granted. But when a guy comes in and you know what you're going to get every single night, every single practice, then it's like gold. And Jay had great stature with the team because Jay never badmouthed anybody. And I think that was probably passed down from Kevin, and I paid attention to when people talked about his father. And Jay would never have a bad thing to say about anybody, but he just had a way of he could get his point across without going there, and people gravitated. So when I needed to take a pulse of the team, when I needed to find out what was going on, how we were doing on that day or that week, I would go to Jay, because he would have a pulse that he was connected to everybody, and his teammates quite often came to him, when they needed some advice. Done. Okay, so we talked about consistency, and again, if you look at the stats, and I went back, because sometimes you forget, or when you're going through it and you're having these great runs or whatever it is and you're coaching, you're like this. You're just concentrated on, hey, what's the job and how are we going to bring this team to the next level? And so you get a chance to reflect. And as I was preparing for this speech, I was really looking at the numbers and the accolades, and I said, good grief, man, I can't touch all that stuff. I'm glad we got Eric, and he did that, because the dude is just, he checks off every box when it comes to stats, and he's a humble guy. And, when he said, hey, I was shocked that I got the call, that's the humbleness. But, dude, I'm telling you, man, you're one of the giants now. You know, you've put yourself in that position, and so I'm very proud of you. Winner, 103-25 in 4 years. That's a lot of winning. I don't care where you are, what level you are. That's a lot of winning. And so I won 100 games fairly quickly here, and probably had a lot to do with that dude right there. He was involved in pretty much all of them. Competitive. So very easygoing demeanor, very easy to be around, but when he stepped on the floor, he was ready to roll, and he wanted to compete. And you could see it as a child, man, because he kind of just had that Jones. He had the ball in his hands. He was running around, but I know he was taking stuff in when he was running around. And, you know, all you can ask for, you know, when you hit the floor, when you prepare your team is give us a good effort of competing on that night. And so when I talk about consistency, I never had to come to Jay and say, man, you're not competing at the highest level. I had to kick him in his tail sometimes because he didn't want to practice sometimes. And so we had to make sure, you know, but that was very isolated. But you talk about competing and wanting to win and being in there for his teammates, none better. And Jay, you'll agree with this. So at that particular time, we had some pretty good bigs in the league. You had the Steffens kid who had just come in from Mesa, who ended up being a tremendous player. You had the Herrera kid from Fort Lewis. You had Wages from Mines, who that's a whole nother speech right there on that one. I won't even get into that. But you test guys and you figure out how good they are by who they're playing against, what the competition level is. So I mentioned those guys, but I'll say this. I think that the way we practiced and the talent that was in our gym, you know, when Jay hit the floor and competed, like, for example, Jay, you know, a big part of how we used our bigs is obviously the game is ball screening. So if I'm a point guard, somebody's coming to set a ball screen, and you have to prepare to how you're going to guard that. And he's the best I've seen at doing that. And then I started to think, and I'm talking about all these other guys in the league, but, you know, you had to guard BJ on a ball screen. You had to guard Michi, Mitch, Nick K, all these guys. So, like, the competition was in our gym, you know. And so when we got to the other stuff, man, and we tried to make practices so hard and competitive that when we got to the game, the idea is, you know what, this is a little bit easier than practices. And I think most times that we hit the floor, we achieve that. So let me tell you about the story of Wednesdays. So we talk about one of our goals was every year that I was here is we want to be the fittest team in the country. And that's not a pipe dream because we're at elevation. So I felt like, you know, that was a real goal that we could achieve, but it would have to come at a price, obviously. So Wednesdays, Jay, you know what Wednesdays are. Those were the days where we put the heart monitors on, and it was a cardio day where we were going to run. And I don't believe we touched the ball a whole lot. So Jay's junior year, and Jay, you can correct me on these details. I'm going to be a little rough. We had one particular Wednesday, and this may have even been a Saturday, but it was a conditioning day nonetheless. And they were tough. They were really tough. And the spirit behind that was, I'll tie it in team-wise, we needed that day because it was more about this too, and just to push them through some stuff that, man, I don't have anything to give, but then you find it because they lean on each other. And so we were galvanizing our team. You had to lean on each other to get through. And so you had to push each other. You had to worry about yourself, but you had to push each other. So we had a closeness there. The other part about it, and I'm going specific with J-Mo, is I needed that dude on the floor for as close as 40 minutes as I could each night, and I knew we couldn't do that unless you were in tip-top shape. So going into his junior year, we had this one particular session where he and I believe it was Deshaun Phoenix, who could not quite make it in the time that they needed to make it in. And we were running these gut busters. I call them gut busters, you know, where you're doing this series of sprints down the floor. And I believe the number was 30. We shortened it. Usually it's 32 or something like that. That was Christmas when we said 32. But we dropped it down to 30. And, you know, most guys made it, Deshaun and Jay. So I said, look, man, the practice isn't over till they get this done. So I shut the other guys down, and I put the heat on those guys and, you know, finally got it done. But it was time after time after time. And then the whole philosophy was, you know what, you can do this. You can do this. When you feel like, hey, it's a wall, I'm done, our job is to push you a little bit more, and then you find out about yourself. And so they made it. They got it done. It took a while. Jay, you probably remember that day, and I know I wasn't on your Christmas list after that. So, but I'm okay with that because, when you have great talent and ability, someone needs to bring it out and push you a little bit. And so, to Jay's credit, he allowed us, the coaching staff, to do that, and sometimes, he took a little bit of a whipping because I knew he could take it, one, and if you're going after Jay, then we better have our stuff together. So sometimes he was a little bit of a lightning rod, but I tell you what, the dude, from a respect standpoint, never blinked, just kept going. He may have mumbled some stuff under his breath. I didn't catch it. But I think he'll agree with you. His senior year was phenomenal. Just look at what happened and how it unfolded. And part of it was he was just fit as he can be, and we could leave him out there and we could keep him in the game because you needed him in the game as many minutes as you can. So as I wrap this up, I want to make sure that I tie it the right way. In our basketball program at MSU Denver, Metro State too, because you remember I was here a long time ago too when it was Metro State. That's a part of the tradition and history as well. But at MSU Denver, our basketball program, and this came from the great Mike Dunlap, he gave us honor, pride, and tradition, and that was the mantra. And so, we didn't say that every single day, but that was planted into us, honor, pride, tradition. And that's how we stacked up this legacy of this program. And so my last story to you before I tie it and wind it down is Jay's senior year. We had found out that the NCAA was going to bring all divisions together in Atlanta to contest the national championship. And of course, the Division I was going to be there, but this was the 75th anniversary, and so they did a really cool thing, and they said Division I, II, IIIs, we're all going to play in Atlanta. And so you felt like, you would be a part of the Final Four. And so I believe it was our first practice. We found out as a staff that was going to be the deal, and we got everybody in the center of the court, and we said, our goal is to make it to Atlanta. And so, but I didn't think that was a pipe dream because, one, the pump was prime because we had a lot of guys coming back. And we had 1 year where we had that new team, Jay, your sophomore year. Those guys, we were all coming back. And so we said, the goal is to get to Atlanta. Now, sometimes as coaches, you throw stuff out and you see what motivates, and sometimes you don't believe that in your heart. Sometimes we're all guilty of that, but you got to put it out there. But this was not just about talking. This was about those guys believed that. They believed that we could do that. And so, sure enough, we made it to Atlanta. We contested a national championship, and it was a very special thing. And it wasn't just about the game, just that whole journey with that team. That team really enjoyed each other. They loved each other. They pushed each other. They made a coach's job very easy. They took care of a lot of stuff that coaches take care of. So we put that out there. We achieved that. And I tell you, we can close our eyes at times when you're laying on the couch and you can flash back to that. That's not anything that anybody's going to ever take away from you, accomplishing that. So in the spirit of it is my great honor, it is with pride, and it is with the tradition of MSU basketball that I welcome Jonathan Morse to the 2022 Hall of Fame. Stay up here, get this picture. Oh, yeah. Congratulations, love you. Pretty good at that.
I tell that same Wednesday morning story with a few more expletives, personally, but Kentucky, North Carolina, Kansas, UNLV, Duke, MSU Denver. By the time my senior year was finished in 2013, these were the winningest programs in the history of the NCAA Division I and Division II basketball. MSU Denver would be third on that list. To even be considered as a Hall of Fame candidate for an elite program at an institution like MSU Denver is unbelievable. Not to mention the consideration amongst the other outstanding athletes from the other men's and women's teams that year in and year out are competing for championships. I remember watching Courtney and Brianna, and they were extremely talented. Every year across the board, you could look at the records from any sport, and there was a lot of winning to be had. Joe McDermott, the former athletic director, deserves a lot of credit for building and instilling a winning tradition. Just gonna hold it. For instilling a winning culture and throughout the athletics program. You can walk into the lobby of the gym, you see cups, you see plaques, you see trophies, you see all the banners hanging up in the rafters. They had to buy new banners because they couldn't fit any more years on them. That should tell you everything you need to know. When I signed on to come to Metro State, I had a pretty good idea of what I was getting into. As you heard from Coach Clark, both my brothers paved the way for me to be here. My oldest brother Joshua was part of the 2000 National Championship team, and my brother Michael was here from 2003 to 2005. His teams went to the Final Four and the Elite Eight in his junior and senior years, respectively. I grew up watching championship caliber teams, led by the legend Coach Mike Dunlap. I got to tag along to practices, hang around in the summertime for workouts and games, and saw what it really took to become elite, what it took to become a winner. My brothers taught me just about everything I know about basketball. Michael even coached me for 2 years at Fairview High School with my original basketball dad, Frank Lee, back there. Coach Lee watched me grow up from a little 6-year-old kid with knee-high socks running up and down the floor during the game, all the way to when he coached me in high school, just like he coached my brothers, all the way until now, and he has been there every step of the way whenever I needed him. The coaching, guidance, and advice that I received from those two made my transition into college basketball seamless. My favorite part of watching Metro growing up was watching them cut down the nets after winning the RMAC and the regional tournament every year. So when I stepped on campus, that's all I wanted was for our teams, was to cut down the nets and win championships. To not only continue the tradition of excellence, but to quote Coach Lee again, in his infamous motto, I wanted to leave it better than I found it, which is really hard to do here. Wanted to leave an indelible mark on the program and on the school. I wanted our teams to win RMAC championships every year, compete at the highest level, and compete against the best in the country for regional and national championships. Well, I quickly found out it's not as simple as that. You have to have the right pieces in place and a whole lot of luck to achieve those. Through my 4 years, we did win 2 RMAC championships, 2 regional championships, and as he alluded to earlier, a trip to the national championship game my senior year. And it took the best team I've ever played with to reach that final game. And I will be the first to tell you I was the 5th most talented player on that starting 5. 3 of them are still playing high-level basketball professional overseas. Brandon Jefferson, fellow Hall of Famer, was National Player of the Year his senior year. Mitch McCarron, National Player of the Year his senior year. And he's also playing against the Phoenix Suns tomorrow night. Nick Kay won Olympic bronze last year for the Australian national team. And Demetrius Miller played for Team USA in the FIBA 3-on-3 World Championships. And then there was me. To me, my game really was nothing special. My job largely consisted of playing defense, rebounding, and making open layups. However, there were days where making open layups was a struggle for me, which created more rebounding opportunities. In all honesty, me smoking layups was definitely not a small part of me getting the rebounding record. Part of my career highlight tape that the great Eric Lansing created for me was me missing like 5 layups in a row and not making one of them. I had teammates that thought I did it on purpose. After games, they'd tell me, "JMO, stop padding your stats." I wish I was that talented. I always had great players and teammates around me that made my job easy. And we had great coaches that I played for. Brandon Hayes when I came in my freshman year, and Derrick Clark that introduced me today. And they just flat out knew how to win, man. My last 2 years when we won the regional, Coach Clark laid out the blueprint for us to win. He let us know exactly what we had to do in order to achieve our goals. From the day-to-day of practice, leading up to the games, From the day-to-day of practice leading into the games, come to playoff time, we knew more about our opponents than they knew about themselves. And I've never experienced preparation like that until I came here. Behind the scenes, there's always the backbone of any successful team and the assistant coaches. All the little things that need to happen for the machine to run smoothly, they're quietly doing that in the background, making sure we're on top of our studies, rebounding for us, running us through workouts, scouting our opponents, recruiting the future of your program. And they do so much and don't get enough credit. So I want to thank all of my assistant coaches as well for everything they did. My freshman year, Coach Tang, for teaching me rebounding techniques and watching film with me every day my freshman year. Brian Behringer for being a voice of reason. Booker Harris for his road wind shuffle. Taylor Harris for keeping all of us level-headed and bringing us down to earth when we needed it. Joey Halley for living with us, competing with us every day. Adam Wall for showing us what true intensity is, day after day. And Michael Ball in particular for running me through layup progressions every day for 3 years after practice. He also had and voiced his confidence in me to be an elite player. Coach Ball sat me down one day after practice, showed me film from that morning, and explained to me, "You can be an All-American if you play like this." Then he crunched some number and said, "You can get 1,000 rebounds this year too." Things I never considered, never considered myself to be at that level. Again, all I wanted to do was do whatever it took to win. In addition to my coaches and teammates, I had immense support from family and friends. I have a wealth of support here tonight. I have almost 2 tables full of people that came out for me. From growing up through high school, the Waters family, the Newmans, the Weglars family, Tarantino family, Will Wilson and his family, to name a few. There are some diehard Metro fans like Tony and Linda with their homemade cookies after every single game. Jerry Hill, can't forget Miss Elaine Becks, and the voice of the Roadrunners, and tonight's host, Andy McClure. My mentor, Natalie Lutz, and Joe Q, who talked to our team every year and helped us with our body composition. And I can't talk about my support system without mentioning my hero, my first true love, my mom, Linda. She has worked overnights at the hospital for as long as I can remember and still made it to so many games, even after sleeping only 2 or 3 hours the night before. She's my rock, and in my completely unbiased opinion, she's the best mom in the world. Love you, Mama. There were always staples at our games that are no longer with us. Our beloved Karen Haas with her signature beep beep. Joe Arceus, who also watched me grow up from a little tyke. But as Coach Clark alluded to earlier, I had no bigger fans than my grandmother and my father. My first 3 years, they made nearly every single game home and away. My grandmother, Jeanette, passed away in the middle of my junior year, but even weeks before leading up to that, she was still up in the stands, cheering us on and yelling at the refs. And my father, as you also alluded to, still holds the unofficial record for being the loudest individual by any fan. His booming voice would carry throughout the entire gym. I learned how to tune it out, but you would definitely notice it on film. And if you didn't hear that, his signature was to take off his shoe and then pound it on the bleachers until he found a better method, where he took my grandma's cane and then banged that on the bleachers. He was never shy about telling me whether I played well or not. He was always my biggest cheerleader. He was pops to everyone on the team. We lost him back in April of this year. I miss him every day. I know he would be proud. Would probably be banging his cane on the table right now. So, I'm sorry, I definitely went over my time. But my love for this place, this institution, everyone involved, runs deep. My pride for being a Roadrunner will forever run through my veins. To sum it up in words would take longer than anyone wants to sit here and listen to. So Todd, John, thank you for putting on a great event. And thank you for this great honor of being in the Hall of Fame. Beep, beep, and go Roadrunners.